Hello and welcome to Under the Microscope, where we discuss what exactly is email hygiene and how it differs from simple email verification. I got my main man, Jack Wrigley here, an expert in all things email hygiene. So Jack, let's get started.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between them, and I'm excited to talk about it and kind of point it out because oftentimes in our world, everything gets blended in together.
Especially if they're the same thing or not.
You're right. So this is a great question to ask people. Is email verification the same as email hygiene? And I think the short answer is kinda. They're from the same family. They sort of attempt to do similar things, but at the end of the day, they really do two specific things separately. And the way I like to talk about it is email hygiene is simple email verification plus threat detection, or hygiene. Simple email verification is just going to tell you whether or not an email will bounce or not. So once you've determined that, the hygiene then is applied towards deliverable email addresses, not the bounced ones, but deliverable. And that's where the nasty stuff can be hiding and lurking and cause marketers all kinds of issues. And specifically, the way we operate at Webbula, our service is really two pieces. It's the simple email verification, so we're going to let you know whether an email will bounce or not. But then we apply the real goodness of Webbula, which are over 50 different threat filters that help you identify where the nefarious stuff might be hiding. Does that make sense? Does that kind of bring it into focus a bit?
Heck yeah.
Good. So as it relates to threat detection, we categorize our threats into kind of 4 buckets. And what's really important as we go through our process is that we don't remove data. That's not our intent. That's not our goal. What we're trying to help marketers understand is, are there threats lurking in their deliverable email addresses? And then we allow them to segment those threats so that they can better understand maybe where those threats are coming from. It could be on a form. It could be somebody's just adding email addresses as they go. There's lots of reasons why bad email oftentimes gets into data. And it's important for people to understand that our job isn't to remove that data. Our job is just to help you identify that bad data and better understand where it might be coming from.
Right on. So we have 5 different categories. We have reputation, fraud, delivery, and conversion. And these all seem very important. What can you tell us about reputation threats and why they matter?
Yeah, it's a great question. From our perspective, and let me explain to you kind of, and to the audience, sort of what the return data might look like when you use our service. So for example, when you present a list, we will verify and then we'll apply the filters on top of your data. And what we return are 4 different categories: reputation, fraud, delivery, and conversion. And we return an R, an F, a D, or a C, depending on what type of threat we're picking up on. So that's important to understand why we're talking about these 4 categories. As it relates to reputation threats, we consider those to be the worst of the worst. And really pay attention to anything we mark with an R, because that data can cause you all kinds of issues. And reputation threats cover a lot of different things. In this case, we're showing some legal traps and blacklisting emails. But at the core of our reputation threat analysis, I think we have 17 different filters alone in that category that help you identify things that will absolutely cause you problems. And so reputation threats, if we mark it as an R, highly recommend you pay attention to that. Really, truly understand why that type of data is getting into your database, and try your best to put a stop to it.
Very good advice. And then we get to fraud, which is very rampant in today's world, particularly with the advancement of technology, which is making it easier for scammers and bad actors to essentially infiltrate email campaigns and just marketing campaigns in general.
Right. Yeah. Oftentimes you'll have, if you have an unprotected form, for example, people can drop, fraudulent email addresses into your forms and just let them go and let them become part of your database. So it's really important to pay attention to anything we mark with an F or as fraud, because there again, those are really, really bad potential email addresses that you shouldn't be necessarily sending to. And again, more importantly, you should be doing your best to try to understand how are those fraudulent email addresses coming in. As it relates to fraud, we have, I think 10 or 12 different filters just within the fraud category. So between reputation and fraud, we have 20 plus filters alone to help kind of identify that type of activity that might be coming into your database.
And then something that's top of mind for many marketers is probably deliverability, because that's one of the big metrics that everybody sees is, I'm getting a lot of bounces. Why is that?
Right. Well, and deliverability covers a lot of things. Having a bounce is an aspect of something that will impact your overall deliverability. But quite frankly, sending to a spam trap is going to impact your overall deliverability. Sending duplicate emails to the same person is going to impact potentially your deliverability. So there's a number of things within deliverability that can cause your deliverability rates to go down. Of course, bounce is one of those, but again, we have multiple filters that try to help identify issues within your database that could cause you deliverability headaches. And so if you can identify those and then segment those out, naturally, your deliverability won't be impacted by any of those things that we show as deliverability threats. And that's a good thing to do.
Right. And then something on top of mind for ROI, conversions.
Conversion. Yeah, so conversions are interesting. The way that we view conversions, we tend to think of conversion filters as business case decisions. So, for example, you might end up having an email database that has a lot of .edu email addresses in it. Chances are we would potentially mark a .edu as with a C, or it could be a conversion threat. Now, if you're selling into the educational world, that's a business decision. We're showing that it could be a conversion threat because people, for example, if somebody's selling shoes and they have a bunch of educational email addresses, well, maybe that doesn't really line up and their conversion might not be as good. So conversion threats typically are business decisions. And if we mark something with a C, it should be viewed from that perspective. Doesn't mean you shouldn't necessarily send to that type of email address. It just, we're trying to slow you down a little bit and make sure that data is who you want to be sending to.
Right. So with all of these great things with email hygiene, where would you want to use this?
Man, everywhere and anywhere anymore. I love to tell people simple email verification isn't enough anymore. It doesn't go far enough with the amount of threats and the amount of challenges that the internet poses today in terms of acquiring customers and things of that nature. So I love to always suggest that email hygiene, which is, again, simple email verification plus the threat detection, should be plugged into the front of any form. You should be doing hygiene at the point of capture always, because through that process, you will quickly determine whether or not email addresses being entered into your form are bots and other various things that are going to cause you issues. And at the point of collection is always the best place to do it. If you instill that, then it's always good to hygiene your list at least every 3 to 6 months, because data does age. It can go bad. Things can happen to it over time. So even though you clear it when you first collect it, we highly recommend that you stay vigilant and continue to run your list data through a service like Webbula for at least every 6 months.
And a symptom of needing to re-cleanse or run hygiene again would be seeing increased bounce rates.
Absolutely, yeah. Or inactivity. So one of the things that we didn't really touch on here, and this is a really cool aspect of Webbula. We not only do the simple email verification and then have all these filters for identifying threats, but included in our service is email activity. And what's really insightful about email activity is we will mark an email address as to when it was first seen, when it was potentially last used, what's the trajectory, is it being used in a similar fashion over the last 6 months, or is it decreasing, etc. That information can then be applied towards bounce rates. That information can then be segmented out and be applied towards conversion rates. There's lots of other really great information within our service besides the awesome filtering, which is key, and the verification. But then you get all this other really great information as well, specifically email activity. That's a biggie.
Yeah, so true. And in our previous webinar, we talked about aging databases and how quickly your database can go out. And we already touched on this a lot, but it is really important to run hygiene on your data regularly, just because, one, people change jobs constantly. They move. There's a lot of reasons why you'd want to maintain good email hygiene, so that way your campaigns are actually effective and turning ROI.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And what's really, really great about Webbula, again, just not to toot our own horn, but I will, we have the ability to create different profiles. So if you are primarily a B2B process, we have profiles that can be set up for B2B. And that's important because business email addresses change typically more frequently than a consumer email address. And because we can create different profiles, we can actually treat that data differently and give you better insights and an overview of that particular data based on the type of data it is. That's important. A lot of other systems will just, hey, an email address is an email address. We have the ability to really define the type of data it is, whether it's business or consumer, which then allows you to manage your database even more thoroughly.
Right. So to get started with Webbula, check out Webbula.com. You can scan this QR code. We are running a 100 free credit for self-sign-up participants. So give the platform a shot. There's zero risk involved. Sign up, test it, and maybe you'll be satisfied and renew.
Yeah. Well, and the good thing there is we're here to be of service as well. So if you use that link, you sign up. If you have any questions, please just come back and ask. We're here to answer those questions and discuss kind of what your results are looking like and really kind of custom tailor a program that meets your needs.
Right on. Well, we want to thank everybody for joining us today. It was a pleasure seeing everybody here. And until next time, I'm Travis.
I'm Jack.
And keep on emailing.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.